Hello everyone, my name is Alvin. I'm going to explain Value Methodology program in Directorate General of Highway Indonesia. My name is Alvin Tehmono. I'm a professional in Value Management or PVM from Indonesia, which can be converted to CVS. My background is a civil engineer with 7 years of work experience. Currently, I'm working as a freelance value engineering consultant in Indonesia based on request. So I'm open for any work opportunities on value engineering worldwide. I gained my hours of VE study as a facilitator in a program called ESP, which is a loan from an international institution where Mr. Hendo Young is the lead value engineer. I learned a lot from him. He is my mentor in value engineering and he is a CVS trainer and a trainer in value management or TVM. Both of us works from 2018 until now in facilitating and training VM studies in Indonesia. My professional goals is to become a certified trainer for value methodology or value management in Indonesia, since there's almost no PVM or CVS in Indonesia except for me. In short, I need to build a VM army in Indonesia to unlock something called community of practice. So we can compete, collaborate, and level up together in terms of VE or VM. Ladies and gentlemen, my presentation is quite long, but it basically answers this question. What if you have the opportunity to develop the VM program from almost a scratch in a country? How will you develop it? This is my presentation content, so I will explain how we develop in an organization called Directorate General of Highway. It is a part of ministry that in charge of making road and bridges. This presentation will include the history of VE. So VE is not new in Indonesia, but why no PVM or CVS until now or until recently? You are curious, right? I will tell you in just a minute. I will also tell how VE improve projects. This is the lesson learned from the ESP program. It is more like findings. I will also tell about the first case study that makes the organizations love VE and then how they try to sustain it. Okay? So this is the history of VE in Indonesia, part 1. In this part, I will explain based on my findings. So VE is not a new item in Indonesia. It was practiced in 1974 in a flyover projects. They use an analogy in the creativity phase. Then there are several VE workshops from the 80s to the 90s. And then in 2006, there's an Indonesian Value Engineering Society, which we call Himpunan Ahli Value Engineering Indonesia. But sadly, this organization is not that active in knowledge sharing. In 2007, the Ministry of Public Work and Housing issued a regulation stating that all public buildings above 8 stories must use VE in their design stage. Based on these regulations, we can assume that there is a demand for VE study, right? Well, we interview the ministry and investigate how they carry out their VE study. Sadly, no facilitator leading the VE study, and no job plan, no function analysis, so it's basically a forum group discussions. And some people still call it value engineering or value methodology even until now, which is not true if you refer to the 2020 SAFE guidelines on value methodology. Okay, let's go back to the story. From 2007 to 2018, in this period, VE is intermittent. Most of the people think that they are doing VE already, but they don't use facilitator, systematic process, etc. Just like what we investigate. So what can we conclude from 2007 to 2018? Yes, there is a regulations that makes VE mandatory, but people do not do VE formally or according to the international standards. So in this case, making VE mandatory is one thing, but doing it according to the international standard is another thing. We need a certain kind of standards or guidelines to ensure the quality of VE study. And this is also one of the reasons why there is no CVS or PVM in Indonesia. They say they do VE already, but in reality they don't have job plan, they don't even have a facilitator, blah blah blah. Let's go back to the story again. In 2018 to 2023, there is a program in the ministry called ESP, where me and Mr. Hende Young work together as a value engineers. So this is your typical VE demand scenario. When there is a loan from a certain international institution in a certain country, and that institution asks for VE to strengthen their public investment management, then that country is seeking for value engineers. And guess what? Indonesia don't have CVS or PVM at that time. So they decide to hire and produce value engineers through capacity building program within the ESP. In the ESP program, we produce the VE guidelines. This document is a checklist for a good VE study. I will explain it later after I explain the case study. We also introduce and showcase how the VE or VM implemented in the projects. We train facilitator in the internal organizations, university, consultant, and contractors, a certified training. We also coach the facilitator in doing the real VE study. Also, we have a VE conference in 2022. This is an internal organization seminar where we invite around 100 training graduates to share their knowledge and experience about VE. So after April 2023, the ESP program ends. Does it mean that the VE die in that organizations? There is a risk for it, but we try to mitigate it by a VE task force, by making a VE task force in that organizations. I will explain it after the case study. Okay, so why should the organizations or DGH sustain VE? To put it simple, it is because the benefit and the collaboration culture. For now, I will explain the benefit only in regards to potential saving. So in the ESP program from 2019 to 2023, we have done 25 projects. Some are facilitated by me and Mr. Hende Young. Some are facilitated by the training graduates. We find 37% of potential saving, which is around 380 million USD. The surprising thing is the VE program is relatively cheap or nothing if we compare it to the potential saving, with the return of investment around 1 to 1,850. So we can say, or we can conclude that the VM program pay back itself by 1,000 times to 2,000 times. Free training? You judge it. Okay, now the next question is, how can VE produce such result? Ladies and gentlemen, the world is not perfect. Let me tell you, based on the findings in the ESP programs that we find. There's a lot of points, but I will only explain several of it. The first thing is that it is something that I would call template solutions. So you are sticking to your habit, including standards. If you are not convinced, try to do function analysis, then put a meta functions called comply to standard, and then do a cost allocations to that functions through functions diagram, and you will find that that functions will cost a lot of money. The next one is about unclear system requirements. People don't know why they built the infrastructures, therefore they don't know how ideal the infrastructure should be. The third one is that also people focus more on the output than the outcomes. In value engineering, we focus more to the outcomes and the context of the system. I will talk a lot using the word context in these presentations. And then the next one is the functions beautify region or beautify bridge is often cost a lot of money. Try to do a cost allocations in function analysis for the functions beautify bridge. Well, there are more, but I will tell you what we often find is miscommunications and unclarified assumptions. In VE or VM, we endorse collaboration and fact-checking. This is why you need a trained VE or VM facilitator. Alright, let's dive deeper. How can VE address those items? One of the most important skills that a VM facilitator must have is questioning. Just like Socrates doing his Socratic questioning, so we ask these 9 general questions to the VE team, and those 9 questions are the questions that you will find throughout the VM job plan. Let's talk through it one by one. Do we need it? This general question asks about the functions of the system, so question can be found in the function analysis phase of the job plan. Such question can be found in the function analysis phase of a job plan. For example, do we need a bridge to beautify region? How can a beautiful bridge beautify region? These type of questions aim to gather more context on the higher order functions. Next one, how much do we need it? This is a general question asking about performance of a functions. Have you ever find a functions like cross valley safely? The word safely is a performance of the functions cross valley. You can model the word safely through a tool called functions performance and specifications, which I will explain in the case study. So let's go back to the questions. The next one is, what are the alternatives? This is the typical creativity phase questions. Have you considered only fixing the road alignment in this area? That is the example. And why don't you choose it? With this type of questions, you can gather more information, more context. Yeah, let's go to the next one. Still the same. What if we spend much less money or effort or maybe budget? So this is the similar questions to the previous questions. It asks several alternatives but with less money, still in the creativity phase. Next one is, what if we spend a little bit more? This question is also similar to the previous questions. It asks alternative but with more money. Again, you find it in the creativity phase. Just mean to trigger discussions. The next one is this the best that we can do to solve problem? Is there any reason why we don't have the best solution now? These questions aim to identify multiple constraints in our solution box. Again, this maybe can be counted as a step in creativity phase. Next one is, which assumptions are still there? In here, we try to ask what kind of assumptions are accounted in a design. We question the validity of the assumptions. We often find that assumption is not valid anymore when the context changes. For example, we assume that the number of trucks will be increased by 5% every year due to a new port. Then we are making a flyover to ease that traffic in the existing conditions. Okay, so the context is a new port and then the assumption is 5% increase of the truck per year. We design the flyover based on that assumptions, and suddenly the port is not as big as what we foresee. So, is the 5% increment still valid? Maybe yes, maybe no. And then, do we still need the flyover projects? Maybe yes, maybe no. That is just one example of how you can use this assumption question. There is more usability of these questions. For example, if your cost engineer assumed a lot of geotechnical engineering design and he didn't coordinate with the geotechnical engineer, then this question can do the job to clarify the cost engineer's assumption on the geotechnical engineering team that he have in his mind. It happened in my VE workshops. So let's go to the next one. What are the risks and how are they mitigated? This is dealing with uncertainties. In here, we question what kind of risk has been identified and what is not yet incorporated in the design. Do we need to address such risk? Why? Again, these questions aim to trigger discussions and gather more information. Maybe you might ask something like this. Why do we need to address risk in these 9 questions? Isn't that this is a risk workshop or a risk study thing? Why do you put it in your VM job plan? Well, the definition of a risk as per ISO 31000 is the effect of uncertainty on objective. In value methodology, we define value as satisfaction of needs divided by resource. Therefore, if you cannot deliver the objective or if you cannot deliver the satisfaction of needs, then is it still valuable? Let's go to the next question. Did the major stakeholders participate? Did we communicate with the right persons? Okay, in the VE workshop, you will invite a lot of stakeholders in your VE team, but is it enough? Maybe the stakeholder can identify other stakeholders that you need to interview to gain more information on the project, and maybe the major stakeholders can give you more data that you need in order to model or generate something in your report. So, do you want to see how we work this in the real VE workshops? Let's go to the next slide. So this 9-question tool is developed by Mr. Hein de Jong. He practiced it in his VE projects in Spain, and I practice it in Indonesia, and it works fantastic for both countries. We do the 9-question exercise in the information phase. We ask the VE team to make context-specific questions for the project based on the 9 general questions, and we discuss the answer one by one. This is a powerful tool to enable critical thinking and information sharing in the information phase. Also, this tool is not limited to certain country or culture because it works in Europe and Indonesia. So try it in your next VE workshop, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, in these sections, I will explain about case study called Enang Enang. This is the first case study that makes the organization love VE. So this is the project. The plan is to make a bridge from A to B. The length of the bridge is 300 meters, but there is a very deep valley with the elevation of 120 meter depth. Why do you want to make a bridge there? Because they want to avoid an extreme bend. You can see it on the bottom right picture. We call it the letter S. And then there are 14 spots of bends around this area. And then this area from A to B is around 2 to 3 kilometers. This road was assumed to be dangerous due to those bends. The functions diagram look like this. The red sticky notes is the higher order functions. The orange sticky notes is about making the bridge. And the green sticky note is about accident mitigation without the bridge. This is somewhat a unique function diagram because we do not limit the scope since we are trying to find the system context in order to optimize the object of the system. The functions diagram is still logical with the how and why, and we are detailing the fast diagram with the proposed design from the consultant. If we simplify the functions diagram, it will look like this. So why do we build the bridge? It is because we want to accommodate long vehicle, reduce travel time, and prevent accident. I hope that you are still following what I conveyed throughout these presentations. Previously, I stated that optimizations occurred when the system context or the left side of the fast can be lowered to a certain acceptable level so that the system component or the lower order function of the fast, which is the right side of the fast diagram, can be reduced also into an acceptable level. How can we capture the system context? Well, it is because we make the functions diagram with the stakeholders. Now the next question is, how can we capture the acceptable level of the system context? That question can be answered by something called functions, performance, and specifications, or just we call performance, answering how much does a function needed to be. And these are the example of the functions performance specifications or FPS in these projects. This is the page 1, this is page 2, this is page 3. Yeah, there's a lot of performance requirement that we put in this system just to understand how much context do we need. It can be simplified into this kind of table. Let's discuss. For the functions prevent accident, we want 0 accident per year. As a value engineer, we ask, how many accidents per year does it occur from A to B? Well, the answer is only 1 accident per 4 years. So we can say that this road is somewhat safe, right? But there is still a fact that there is an extreme bend in this area. Next one is about reducing travel time. We want to reduce 20% of the travel time. But how much is 20%? And how heavy is the traffic? Well, the answer is 20% is around 2 minutes. And then the traffic is still low. The road is only loaded with 27 from its capacity, so it is around 30 vehicles per hour that crossing that road. Okay, so the traffic is low and time saving is not much. Now the next question is about accommodating long vehicle. We want a 12-meter truck can pass from A to B. In here we ask the questions, how can the existing road link accommodate the long vehicle, for example 12-meter long vehicle. Let's go to the next slide. So our project is a small link from X to Y, Y to Z. There is the link, and our project is in the number 4. As you can see, from X to Z there are 6 bottlenecks, but the major bottleneck is number 4. Therefore, can a 12-meter truck pass from X to Z if we fix only number 4? The answer is not. But it is a fact that if you fix number 4, 12-meter truck can pass in number 4. Okay, let's go back to the functions diagram. Previously, the context was satisfied by a bridge, but the next question is, are the contexts still valid after we perform fact-checking through function performance and specifications? So we simplify the functions diagram much further, stating that the context that you need is only accommodating long vehicle. Now, must we use a bridge to satisfy the functions accommodate long vehicle? No. We can do other solutions like fixing the dangerous bends, which only costs 5 million USD. So there is a potential saving from 23 million USD by making a bridge to 5 million USD if you only fixing the dangerous bends or just fixing the bends. Remember that the VE program pay back itself even if you only do this one project. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Before I explain the graph, I will explain what is value. Well, value is a ratio between the satisfaction of needs against resource. The satisfaction of needs represented by total score, as you can see on the x-axis of the graph, and the resource represented by life cycle cost, as you can see in the y-axis of the graph. In this case study, we generate several scenarios, which is do nothing, and then scenario 1, which is only fixing the letter S, the dangerous bends, and then scenario 2, which we fix the whole road alignment, we fix all the 14 bends, and then scenario 3, A and 3B, which is making a bridge. Now, which scenario will you choose from this graph? Okay, in here, the rule pay more, get more applied. All scenario is valid to choose except do nothing. If you don't have enough money and you want to put your money in another projects, then choose scenario 1 or 2. They are good enough in satisfying the basic functions. But if you have more money, you may go for the bridge because it gives you another functions, which is beautify area that might attract tourists. To add another context, on the southern part of the road, there is a national tourism spot. Therefore, making a beautiful bridge is somewhat justified investment, and therefore the bridge score is higher than just fixing the bends. Therefore, you pay more to get the functions attract tourists. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, this is the final takeaway from the case study. The process of value engineering helps you to think out of the box or expanding the box. So before we initiate the VE study, we are in the pink box. Our solution is only either concrete bridge or a steel bridge. Such small solution space happen due to limitations, such as assumptions. We assume that road is not safe enough. And then design criteria. For example, we want to reduce 20% of the travel time. Also standards, maybe the road must have a vertical alignment below 10% because the standard says so. And maybe other constraints such as budget. And then through value engineering, you enlarge the solution space from the pink one into the blue one through questioning within the VE process. We do function analysis, fact-checking, acquire more informations, more context, clarify objectives, clarify assumptions, blah blah blah. And then what do we do after we enlarge the solution space? Yeah, we do creativity phase so that we put ideas in the blue box, the new solution space. So this is why you need to do all of the steps of the VE job plan, and you need an independent facilitator to make it happen, including a good VE team. Remember, a garbage in is a garbage out. Okay, let's go back to our VM program. I will explain two things in these sections. The first one is the VM task force, and then the second one is the VM guidelines in the organizations or DGH. So how a VM task force sustain VM in DGH? It basically do four things. The first one is making a VM strategy. Second one is to provide VM training to the organizations or knowledge sharing sessions. The third one is to update the VM guidelines, because as your VM journey progresses, as you matured in your VM journey, you will learn new things and new contexts will occur due to certain change in organizations. And then the last one is implement VM in projects. So those are the four jobs of the VM task force in DGH. The next slide is that why are we making the VM guidelines in DGH? Isn't that the SAFE or European guidelines is enough? Well, the first one is that we need to break the language barrier. Not all Indonesian is fluent in English, and then the value culture must be addressed. Therefore, tailoring the SAFE or European VM guidelines toward the organization culture is a must. The next one is, remember that from 2007, VM is mandatory in Indonesia, but they don't use facilitator, no job plan, no function analysis. Yes, you need a guidelines to ensure that the quality of VM practice is keep up with the international level, so that they can become PVM or CVS. The next one is, not all projects need PVM or CVS. If it is a small project, then maybe a VMA or VM1 graduates can handle it. Therefore, we regulate the threshold of the VM projects and facilitator in the guidelines. I will explain this one later. Okay, so how can we produce such guidelines? The left side is our VE guidelines that we produce in DGH or the organizations. And the answer is that we get the best from the European Value Management Guidelines, which is the EN 12973 years 2020, plus the SAFE VM Guide from 2020. And then if there is a time travel machine exists, I would like to add the EN17952, which will be issued this year, I think, 2023. That is basically a European guidelines for function analysis, basic characteristic, requirements and guidance for implementations and achieving deliverables. I believe that guidelines is still in a draft and needs several inputs, so do check it out and do put your input if it is still available. Okay, in our VM guidelines, we state that all feasibility study project must do VE and all complex detail engineering design must use VE. Okay, and we also state that for the project above 32 million USD, you need a CVS or a PVM, or if you below it, for example, if you are a VM2 or VMF2 graduates, you may facilitate the 32 million USD project or above by using a coach or a mentor. That mentor must be a TVM or CVS trainer. By the way, currently I am the only Indonesian person that owns PVM. I know there is one CVS from Indonesia, but I didn't know if he lived in US or Indonesia. Therefore, maybe I can safely say that I am soloing the 32 million USD projects above. And I do clearly need to become TVM or CVS trainer to produce more CVS and PVM in Indonesia. Okay, this is one of my last slides before the final conclusions. Let's go back to my very first question in this presentations. What if you are going to develop a VM program from almost a scratch in a country or in organizations? Actually, I don't think that you will build a VM program from a scratch because every organization has its own value culture. Now, what is a value culture? There is a definition in your screen, but to put it simple, it is what value means to you and your stakeholders, and you address it with solution seek, and you address it before decision taking. So maybe your organizations do not practice VM since they don't use VM facilitator, not doing function analysis, also not doing the systematic VM job plan, etc. But are they talking about value? The answer is yes. They address the cost and its benefit before decision taking, and by the existing value culture, you build the ideal VM program. On the bottom left of your screen, there is a VM maturity model from Mr. Timmy Hendrickson. In Indonesia, we don't start it from level 1, but we start it from level 2. The people aware to consider their design based on price and quality, they need the VM training to climb the ladders to reach the next level within the VM maturity model. My last message can be found in the bottom right side of the screen. What I believe is that when we give the VM training to the people, we do not ask them to empty their glass. Instead, we ask them to keep the water in the glass, and through the VM training, we turn the water into coffee or tea by adding the substance called functions thinking, facilitation, job plan, etc., which is the ideal value methodology. My final takeaway for my presentation is 1. The VM program pay back itself 1,000 to 2,000 times. Even an optimizations in one project can pace the whole VM program for 5 to 10 years. And then the next one is making VE mandatory is one thing, but making it formal, ensure the quality is another thing. In order to know the benefit of VE, you must do the formal VE study as stated by the international guidelines. And you, as a value engineer, should not go less than what stated by the international guidelines. Do not let your clients steer too much on your VE study process. Try to convince them with the benefit that they will have if they do the VM process completely. And then in order to ensure the quality of the VM practice in an organization, you must tailor the international guidelines to your organization value culture, including language. Last one, when you give the VM training or even develop the VM program, please address the existing value culture in that organizations. Make them own the VM program. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, that is my presentations. I hope you enjoy it. And if you have any questions, you may email me through my Gmail account or go to my LinkedIn. As long as there is a hashtag open to work in my LinkedIn profile picture, then I'm still open for work opportunities, not only in Indonesia but worldwide. Thank you for the opportunity.